Hello there. You're watching this video obviously because you're curious or concerned about the Karen Reed trial in the egregious murder of John Okeefe. So this has been turned into an expert witness data war. The defense has some really good quality expert witnesses, and the state has expert witnesses that are given things that they control, such as they're giving swabs of stuff from his clothing or body. They have complete control of what is being sent in without the defense having any right to have separate analysis done. They have complete control. But one thing they don't have control over is the analysis of John Okeefe's iPhone. And thus far, the state has not even offered, that I have seen in the records, unless I've missed it, in their discovery of the witness list that they intend to provide. I could have missed it, but I don't see anything in the analysis of the Fit health data. So the Fit app is basically a thing in your phone that literally records your every movement. It knows when you're stationary. When you begin to move, with your phone on your body, of course, what it does is it records in chunks of time. So, from 11:09 a.m. to 12:21 a.m., he took 170 steps. And it breaks it down into different sections of time during that period. 326.77 feet. So you notice that's kind of 12:11, that's about 10 minutes approximately. Then you'll see a smaller chunk of time that was analyzed. His phone itself, just so you know, was analyzed. And then the data provided by the phone companies and the app companies was also analyzed to do verifications. 12:21 a.m. to 12:24. Now, do keep in mind that you have Jen McCabe testifying that she saw him arrive about 12:18 a.m. It's really important the times that she chose to mention. 12:21 to 12:24 is about the time when he started taking steps. It's consistent with her arriving. They talk for a couple minutes, and then he gets out. They're saying that as soon as he got out of the car, he never made it into the house. He was immediately struck by her, that somehow or another she went forward and then went backwards and ran him over, but only hit his head, even though he's standing up and he's 6 foot something. And this is why the FBI, 3 PhD accident reconstructionists have concluded, each equally have concluded, it's not possible that that car caused the injuries, for various reasons. But so you have 80 steps here. Look at the second line there. So that's about distance to the house. So because it's broken down in approximately 3 different minutes and 10 seconds approximately. So he gets out of the car, he walks 80 steps, which is a total of 200. This is approximation, but it's telling you there's a very long distance that he traveled, which is consistent that he walked inside that house. Then from 12:21 to 12:24, separate section, that during this period of time that he's taken these steps, there's a separate notation of a specific type of movement that the app is able to determine that during this period of time that he's doing all these steps, he was going up and down stairs. Then, after, which was consistent with some comments about him going upstairs, and then he ends up in the basement, is what it sounds like. So then you have this, there's no movement from 12:24 to 12:31. So that's approximately 7 minutes. So for a period of 12:31:56, you're 4 seconds away from 12:32. So approximately 20-second period of time, he took this amount of many feet. This is how much he traveled after he was going up and down flights of stairs. Now, the thing about 1231 is very important to note that timestamp in comparison to Jen McCabe's phone call. She called John at exactly 12:31 because something happened during this period, and it makes me look more at this like it was deliberate, because immediately after he was injured at this time, she starts calling his phone to pretend like they never saw him and he was still outside with Karen. But the problem with that is that HealthFit data app doesn't lie. It's almost as strong evidence as DNA. He's got movement after he arrived. He arrived approximately between 12:16 and 12:18. Okay? And he's sitting out there in a car. And this is exactly what Karen Reed identifies happened. Based on what she could remember, she remembers sitting there and waiting for a few minutes because she's expecting him to text her. And she waits and waits. And then she goes home disgusted because her man done blew her off, and goes to sleep. And she's ranting and raving and sending voicemails like, how dare he do this? Because he had done something like this before, where he'd kind of gone out and got drunk and left her to take care of his kids. And, you know, Carrie in her ear talking about she's nothing but a glorified babysitter with benefits, you know, that really affected her. You know, she's in her ear telling her she's nothing but a babysitter with benefits. So she was really upset, you know, but they worked it out. So she's thinking in her mind, he's doing it again. He's going to go to that party, get drunk, and then treat me like his babysitter to stay home. And she was livid. She's sending some nasty voicemails, but that's because she thinks he's alive at the party, blowing her off. But he wasn't. He was attacked by somebody, the dog, or both. But the fact that Jen McCabe calls his phone at 12:31 a.m. after he had made all this movement, 287 feet is a pretty good distance for him to walk in a 3-minute period of time. A block, I know the exact, I have an acre. I own an acre. My property sits on an acre. And it's exactly 300 feet long. Exactly. It's a 100 by 300 foot lot. So I know exactly what 300 feet trekking looks like. So for him to have walked, now it could have been, it shows him going up and down stairs. So he walks in the house, he goes upstairs, then he goes downstairs to the middle part of the floor, and then he goes down to the basement. Okay, so there's this movement of going up and down stairs. You can't have that. Some people are like, oh, well, that's where she hit him, and he flew up in the air, and that's where he was ascending. I'm like, okay. But the problem with that is that your body's not taking steps while you're being flung up in the air. And then you don't walk 36 more steps after you're flying up in the air, if that's what their theory was. Because literally some people that just can't accept this data, they're trying to explain it away. Yeah, she hit him and he flew up in the air. If you fly up in the air, unless you're just like somebody who's like, I don't know, maybe part alien and you don't have any gravity to you, you would go up and down very quickly. Okay? It wouldn't last this amount of period of time. Okay? So, let's just throw that out. Let's reason. So at 12:31, this is 7 minutes after. If he was hit, this was because he was flying up there. Then 7 minutes later, he's walking from 12:31 for approximately 20 seconds. He's walking again. So from here to here, but the interesting thing is at 12:31, almost 12:32, that's when she calls his phone. Jen does. acting like, I never saw this man come in. Did she know they were planning to kill him? And so she starts as soon as 20 seconds. This is as soon as the attack begins. Maybe the attack lasted 20 seconds. Huh? So as soon as the attack begins, she starts calling John to show that he never made it in the house. It's just not, this just doesn't show the picture of her arriving at 12:18 and then turning around and hitting him. And interestingly, let's look at the records they're trying to show of the EDR of her car. The timestamp doesn't match this. Now watch what she says. Boy, we remember this day. Trial day 15, Jen McCabe. It says, as a matter of fact, you texted. And see, the reason he's going back and forth with her on that whole Jeep thing with Brian Higgins is because she's thinking she's wanting to act like, I wasn't asked about his Jeep. He's glad that she's putting the Jeep on the scene. All right. Okay, so it says, matter of fact, you texted as soon as you saw the vehicle, 12:27. And then a few minutes later at 12:31, you texted, pull behind me. So you've got the text messages earlier in the testimony, and he doesn't point out the inconsistency because he's planning for that. Remember when she said they arrived, consistent with the Nagels, and you've got Matt McCabe's testimony, and then you've got Brian Higgins. Remember Matt at the window looking for him? Okay? But his phone shows exactly when he arrived. It's got the coordinates of where he was at when he arrived. I'm going to show you that. But keep in mind this right here. She texted him acting like he never made it in the house at the exact same time the attack happened, and he never walked another foot again after those 20 seconds. Watch. So I'm going to show you when it shows that he arrived, okay? Between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m., all this data that they're collecting on his phone. But it has his coordinates of where he was, exactly what time he arrived. It says, based on my analysis of the location data obtained on Okeefe's cell phone, it appears that the first location pinged in the neighborhood near Albert residence occurred at 12:19. Location data indicates that Okeefe arrived at the Albert residence at 12:24 a.m. So go back and look at the time that they give you. Now let's look back at the health data and what happens when he arrives at 12:24. Watch what happens. This is your 12:20. This is a chunk of time. Now, it's not going to break it down to the seconds. At 12:21, 15 seconds, he went from here to here. It breaks it down in chunks of time. So here you have 12:24. He's taking this amount of many steps. Almost an acre's worth of steps is how I look at it. Going up and down stairs. And then, at 12:31, which is approximately 7 minutes later, a little bit, actually 7.5 minutes later, he's walking. Okay? So after the ascending up and down stairs, which, as you can see here, at 12:24 when he arrives, is showing this amount, these steps were taken at the latter part, because obviously he's sitting in his car because his phone has him pinging, arriving. So you know for this chunk of time, these steps started here because he couldn't have been walking when he's sitting in a car and he doesn't arrive until 12:24. See, it shows he's arriving at 12:24 at the residence. And that is when he started walking. That's when the movement started. Going up and down stairs, walking almost an acre. He couldn't have been doing it from here to here because he's sitting in a car. You can't walk an acre when you're sitting in a car. And it knows when it's stationary. It knows when it's moving. It knows when it's going up and down stairs. And then 7 minutes later, after he takes all these steps, 7.5 minutes later, approximately, he takes his last 36 steps of his life. And this right here, this period, little chunk of time right there, the last 83.5 feet that he ever walked, is around the time that Jen was texting his phone. Now maybe he's in another part of the house and she didn't know that he was in another part of the house and she's thinking he's still outside. We'll give her that benefit of the doubt. Right? But the fact of the matter is, she's texting him. He's in the house. That's the bottom line. Then there's this testimony, which I've got this muted. Jackson, all he needed to get out of this woman was that she was instructed very specifically by Lowley to not search or include in her data analysis any of the other activities going on in her phone. And she agrees she was given a very limited scope of which she could do her analysis. And that's not how you analyze people. And I'm getting ready to show you his report and how he analyzed. She's going to admit it. What to look at. Yes, she was very, very limited by Lowley. That's going to be a problem for them if she even needs an appeal, based on the expert witness that I'm about to show you. He will explain how they create an identifier code when that identifier code is put into the permanent database. So basically, you have what he explains is what's called the write-ahead file. So he performed the analysis, which was located in the write-ahead file. They're temporary in nature. They show the location where the data, now that's not a tab, that's the data. That means an actual, somebody used a keyboard to type a search. That is classified as data. And it was stored in here and the database record ID number. She was not allowed to even look at other activities in the phone. And she's saying there was no Google search at that time. She was given very limited scope on what she could look at. So let's say, for example, you go to a website. Let's say it's got a search bar where you can look up products. It's a store online. And you decide, you know what? I found the website where I'm going to shop at, but I'm not going to shop right now. So I'm just going to leave this tab open. I'll come back to it later. I've got other things to do. Then you go back later. Then you search into that website. That going into that tab and opening it up is a separate, different data that is given identifier codes than when you use a keyboard and you use a search, such as this right here. This search was created specifically at 2:27 a.m. Now let's say, okay, but those searches were done later. They were done later. The problem with that is that every single search that she made was given a separate identifying search number, meaning she searched individually each time. She didn't just have a tab open. And so then he analyzes other things she was doing, and he says specifically, and this is what Lowley prohibited them in the analysis, and she said she was given a very limited scope to analyze. So what he states is that there were other things going on. It shows the iPhone was unlocked between 2:23 and 2:31 a.m. The text messages were sent at 2:25 and 2:25:56, almost 2:26. So you've got text messages being sent literally seconds, not even a full minute before she makes this right here. 2 screenshots were deleted at 2:26:37. And approximately a minute later, she types in uses the keypad to text the data, the words, or this, if you want to call it words. And this was given a unique identifying code before it was transferred over into the permanent database. And every single search subsequently to that was given a separate, unique data identifying search code. That's how it works. So it's not possible that she just opened a tab. So it shows right here what the further after that. So she was on her phone operating it. She didn't just open the tab. She typed the words. So Celebrite, because if Jennifer McCabe's expert was correct, she literally could sue Celebrite for giving false information, because it wasn't her lawyer. It wasn't some blogger who came out with this information. It wasn't just this came out before the expert witness got even involved. He did a further evaluation. He's verifying if Celebrite's analysis was correct. And he does an analysis of the phone of John Okeefe as well, and her phone. And there were text messages to John that he was not able to see because Jen deleted them. There were things that she deleted he couldn't even analyze, but he can analyze the fact that she did, in fact, delete. Because he says that in this document, how she had text messages, calls, between her and John. Look, he says, in my professional opinion, the confirmed deletion of recent historical call information suggests that a user has engaged in efforts to tamper with, alter, distort, and or hide information or evidence. And Lowley specifically, deliberately, and willfully limiting the analysis of an expert when he knows what this says, he's in collusion. He's absolutely in collusion. That's my story. That's my opinion. And more interestingly was the search about how long does it take to digest food. Because when she's expecting him to die, thinking, oh, he's going to die pretty quickly, his digestive processes will cease. And she's just thinking, I'm just thinking that that's what she's thinking, of what they will be able to find on the timeline of when he died. Because that's important. If he was attacked much, much farther than the timeline of when Karen dropped him off. They know that her phone record's going to show when she left that residence, right? So if his body's still digesting food, okay, I'm just thinking that's where her mind is going with the whole digesting food thing, trying to think of everything, you know, in a panic. Oh my gosh, you know, what kinds of things are they going to be able to determine of his time of death, that kind of thing. So here it talks about the deletions. Okay, so there's cell phone data obtained from John's phone and Karen's phone, but those same data is not in her phone because she deleted. Why would she delete interactions with John Okeefe? She didn't think that it was still going to be in his phone. 17 calls listed on his phone referencing Jennifer McCabe's cell phone number. Only one of these calls is found in her call history. And that artifact is listed as deleted. She also deleted the calls between her and Karen. And more interestingly is that she goes out of her way to drive by John's residence after he was murdered, attacked, and left in the snow to die. She leaves, I'll show you, 12:18 arrives, 1:47 leaving, okay? Shortly after Brian Higgins left. Don't forget, he left at 1:27. Or shortly after 1. He arrived at the police station, which is under 2 miles away, at 1:27 a.m. So not long after he leaves, but he's still there, and he was there when John was in that house. Okay. So 2:03, she makes a turn on Lawrence Street, and which intersects with John's residence. Then, just seconds later, she turns around. She makes a U-turn. See, she went out of her way. If she kept going, she would, she had to turn around in order for her to go in the direction to go home. So her course is reversed, and then she goes home. So she makes a point, after leaving this house where he was murdered, to go to John's house, probably to see maybe if she's awake. And then she makes a right turn on Lawrence Street. This is the turn before Pleasant Street, which intersects with John's residence. And then she does a U-turn and goes home. Yeah. At 12:31, the 20 seconds, the last 20 seconds of John's life of voluntary steps that he made was directly after he had got out of the car, walked this amount of feet, gone up and down stairs. This is a chunk of time, okay? From here to here, this is basically same chunk of time, because it's indicating that all these steps right here included going up and down stairs. And then 7.5 minutes later, after he went up and down stairs, he walked the last 36 steps of his life. And during that period of time was when he was attacked. And that is mysteriously when Jen texts his phone as if he wasn't even there, to try to give the appearance that he never made it there.